Welcome back! My name is ballerscuba. This is Video Games Over Time! We are still in 1985. Today, we're going to talk about The Bard's Tale. The story of The Bard's Tale takes us to Interplay Productions. Interplay Productions is an American video game developer founded in 1983 by developers Brian Fargo, Jay Patel, Troy Worrell, and Rebecca Heineman with investor Chris Wells. Originally, Interplay made non-original games and ports of existing games. However, they were able to negotiate a contract with Activision, receiving $100,000, over $302,000 in 2024, to make 3 text adventure games for the publisher. They started releasing games for the contract in 1984, including Mind Shadow, a graphic adventure computer game published by Activision. Based loosely on Robert Ludlum's novel The Bourne Identity, the player plays a character with no memory of his identity on a deserted island. The player's goal is to escape the island and regain the character's memory. The game would be relatively successful, selling 100,000 copies. Interplay would follow this success with The Bard's Tale. For The Bard's Tale, Interplay turned to Michael Cranford. Michael Cranford had previously worked on ports, including a port of Zaxxon to the Commodore 64 and the Apple II port of Donkey Kong. Cranford had been playing Dungeons & Dragons with Brian Fargo, one of Interplay's founders, and was inspired to make a game based on that genre, but improve upon what has already been done. In particular, Cranford pointed to Wizardry as a game that fell short, particularly in terms of graphics and sound. Cranford also took inspiration from his Christian faith. He would add references to Jesus into the game, and almost all the city names in the game are taken from the New Testament. Cranford's design would be assisted by Brian Fargo and Roe Adams III. The graphics were done by David Lowery, with sound by Lawrence Holland. The game was produced by Joe Ibarra. Rebecca Heineman would help with the programming and is credited with programming routines that allowed for more graphics and animation. The Bard's Tale is a role-playing game. The player can create up to 6 characters. These characters can have one of several classes from several different races. Depending on the release, some characters can be imported from Wizardry or Ultima 3. The player's goal is to explore dungeons, solve puzzles, and gain experience by defeating enemies in the dungeons. The player can then upgrade their characters with better equipment from the money they find along the way. Ultimately, the player's party should defeat the evil wizard Mangar the Dark and save the town of Skara Brae. Interplay reached out to Electronic Arts to publish the game. We have talked about Electronic Arts before. They were responsible for Archon. Electronic Arts released The Bard's Tale to the Apple II and Commodore 64 computers in December 1985. That is a brief backstory to The Bard's Tale. With that told, it's time to briefly look at the inside of the box for the game. It offers an introduction to the plot that reads, "Long ago, when magic still prevailed, the evil wizard Mangar the Dark threatened a small but harmonious country town called Skara Brae. Evil creatures oozed into Skara Brae and joined his shadow domain. Mangar froze the surrounding lands with a spell of eternal winter, totally isolating Skara Brae from any possible help. Then, one night, the town militiamen all disappeared. The future of Skara Brae hung in the balance, and who was left to resist? Only a handful of unproven young warriors, junior magic users, a couple of bards barely old enough to drink, and some out-of-work rogues. You are there. You are the leader of this ragtag group of freedom fighters. Luckily, you have a bard with you to sing your glories, if you survive. For this is the stuff of legends, and so the story begins." In the manual that comes with the game, there is also this introduction. The Bard's Tale is a fantasy role-playing game, first in a series of Tales of the Unknown. This one is set in the city of Skara Brae. Like other fantasy role-playing games, there are 3 objectives you will be trying to accomplish. How you do this is up to you. Your most important goal is to complete the quest built into the game. In The Bard's Tale, the city of Skara Brae is threatened by an evil mage called Mangar. You must find Mangar and persuade him to release the once harmonious city from his evil control. But Mangar is protected by layers of obstacles, mazes, and evil henchmen. Your second goal is to develop characters capable of surviving these barriers. These characters are your alter ego in The Bard's Tale. They act according to your commands, but over the course of the game they change, much as real people do over a lifetime. They improve their skills in magic, combat, stealth, etc. They amass wealth and treasured objects, and they worry about dying too soon. Your third goal is to explore the entire world of The Bard's Tale. There are numerous goodies, puzzles, and special places in Skara Brae. Part of the fun is finding them and discovering the layout of this fantasy world. How do you get into the waned-off towers? What's in the castle? Where are the legendary catacombs of Skara Brae? The rest of the long manual introduces the controls of the game, the races and classes available, and a general strategy guide for how to play role-playing games. That is briefly what is presented in the game's manual. With that explored, it's time to play the game for ourselves. And here we are in the game. This is The Bard's Tale. As you can see, copyright 1985 by Interplay Productions with EA's logo on the bottom left there. The song I sing will tell the tale of a cold and wintry day. This requires me to drink. Of castle walls and torchlit halls, and a price men had to pay. And there's the castle walls, no torchlit halls for us in the picture this time. When evil fled and brave men bled, the Dark One came to stay. I assume that is the Dark One threatening me with a sword. Till men of old, for blood and gold, had rescued Skara Brae. Once again, this requires a lot of drinking. Being a bard is not easy. And there's the gold. Maybe it's covered in blood. There's blood mixed into there. No men of old, though. And that, I believe, is the full song, so it just kind of goes through again. So let's hear the jingle again, and then move on. Alright, so as soon as we're in the game, we have to insert a character disc. Let's go ahead and swap that out. I am playing the Apple II version of the game. This is the one that I think will be easiest for me to get through, so we'll go ahead and put the character disc in and hit a key. There we go. So here's the kind of utilities for what you can do with the character disc. You can copy characters from one disc to another. You can make a new disc using an existing disc, or you can transfer characters. Transfer is the interesting one. That is where you can bring people in from Wizardry or Ultima 3. Specifically Ultima 3, right? Even though Ultima 4 had just come out by this point. I think they didn't program it for Ultima 4. It's for Ultima 3. I find that the Wizardry one is interesting because it seems to be the original Wizardry. I'm not sure if you can bring in characters from Wizardry 2 or 3 in. They just say the original Wizardry. But of course you would have to have characters from not only Wizardry and Ultima 3, but the same version. It would have to be an Apple version, I believe, in order to move them over. We're not going to do that. We're going to create some new characters. I have actually already created the new characters for The Bard's Tale. We're going to move on with fresh characters. It doesn't feel right to transfer characters that have already been through an adventure forward to this one. So we'll go ahead and start the game. And then here we are in the Guild of Adventurers. That's where you start the game. You need to assemble a party. We can check the roster. I've actually cleared out the disc and created characters, so it's a little bit of spoilers. We'll take care of that next video. For now, we'll just kind of go over the options that are available to us. And we'll start with D disc options to kind of look at what options are available. You can create a member, you can save a party. Once you have a party together, you can save it, and I will take care of that. You can delete a member, you can leave the game, or you can exit disk operations. We'll start by creating a character, and we're going to go quickly over the options here. These are your fairly standard fantasy races by this point. You are probably familiar with these. We have humans, we have elves, dwarves, hobbits, half-elves, half-orcs, and gnomes. These are how you're going to determine the max stats possible when creating a new character. Specifically, when you're creating a new character, they will have a set amount of max stats. You can increase them as you play the game, so the race doesn't matter too much by the end. There are some things that will kind of matter in terms of like HP and what they call SP, which are like spell points. Those will be determined by the race, but ultimately the totals that you get at the beginning aren't going to matter a ton. So we'll start by kind of looking through all of these. We'll start with a human. And here we have character X. And they give us some stats. 10 strength, 11 IQ, 8 dexterity, 9 constitution, 11 luck, and 19 HP. These are, once again, kind of your standard RPG stats. We have strength, that's going to determine how hard you hit. We have IQ, which is going to determine how strong your magic is. We have dexterity. In this game, dexterity is going to determine how quickly you get your turn. Then we have constitution, which is going to determine how hard you can be hit. And then we have luck. Luck, I don't know. It always seems to have a vague sense of luck, and it's just like a modifier, and it doesn't end up doing a ton, so I end up not caring too much about luck, but luck is here. And then we have HP, which is set at 19. That's how much damage you can receive. Now a human, the max stats are just going left to right, top to bottom. 17, 13, 15, 15, 12, and then HP doesn't really end up mattering. I think it's 29 is the max that you can have for HP. So then you can kind of choose what class you want to start with. Humans have a lot of classes they can choose from. We'll briefly go over them, but a lot of them aren't going to end up mattering too much. Warrior is your basic fighter. A lot of people say that they're really good early game, but not so great end game. We have Conjurer. Conjurer is a magic casting class. They say that it's vital pretty much to have a Conjurer in the party kind of at all times. Magician, also pretty good. They don't have the healing magic that Conjurers do, so they end up not being great early on, as good as the Conjurer, but they're very good later on. Rogues, I hear, are not particularly useful, but if you want to open up trap chests and stuff like that, Rogue is what you're going to want to do. Bard is technically a fighter. Like the way they have the bard set up is a little weird, but bards are going to be very useful. They basically use items and songs to make the rest of the party better, and a lot of people say that they are necessary for the game, but it's, after all, the Bard's Tale, so even if they're not necessary, you're probably going to want to bring a bard along. And they're pretty good at the end of the game too. So a lot of people highly recommend bards. Then we have a paladin. Paladin is essentially similar to a warrior, but better at kind of the end of the game and specializes against evil. Hunters are supposed to be very good. They're not as good to start, but they get better as time goes on. And they have a good chance of doing insta-kills towards the end of the game. And then we have a monk. Monks are a little bit bad at the beginning of the game, but they start being very good at the end of the game. But they're very evasive, and they're melee most of the time. But this is pretty much the end of the character creation screen. You basically choose a race, get the stats, which are randomized. You choose a class, and then you name the character, and that's it. That's how the character creation works here. But you might notice the stats across the board here, 10, 11, 8, 9, 11, and 19. These are not good stats. Particularly, I'm looking at dexterity and constitution. You don't want single digits there. So what you can do is hit escape, and then hit 1 for human again, and then boom, new stats. And you can just keep doing this over and over until you get the stats that you want. Like, this is good stats. They're good. This would be more of a fighter because IQ is so low, but ultimately that's kind of how character creation works. Let's take a look at some of the other races. Elves are up next. They can be pretty much the same things, some of the same things that the humans could. I don't think there's anything new here. But elves are kind of more geared towards magic. I believe that their max strength is 15. It's not. Yeah, I believe it's 15. IQ is 16. Dexterity is 16. Constitution is 13. Luck is 13. Max HP is a lot higher than 4. It's 29, but you'll gain HP as you play. So they're more of your conjurers, magicians. That's really where the elves shine because their strength is lower and their IQ is higher. Next up, we have dwarf. Dwarf is going to be more of your frontline attacker. Once again, nothing new here, but they're going to have more strength. Here are the maxes again. 18, 13, 14, 17, 10. And then HP is 29. And they cannot have SP because they cannot cast magic. So none of those classes are going to cast magic because it's a dwarf, and they don't do that. Then we have hobbits. Hobbits are, once again, more magic users. In fact, they are the fastest that you can get. That's why dexterity is so high here. But their maxes are 11, 13, 18, 12, 17, and then 29. I believe it's 29 across the board for HP. Yes, it is. So we'll stop talking about that. But they have the highest dexterity, which is why they're good at being like a conjurer or a magician if you want the magic to happen soon, or if you want the bard to go early on. The hobbit will be good for that. And then once again, nothing new here. I believe that humans can be everything, so we probably have talked about everything. Half-elf is up next. And half-elf is kind of halfway between a human and an elf. So their max stats are 16, 15, 16, 14, 13. I will say, though, that most people tend to say if you're going to be... there's not really a point of a half-elf. Just go either for an elf or a human, at least stats-wise in the game. That's going to be better for you. Just commit to one, right? If you're going for magic, go for an elf. If you're going for more of a warrior type, go for a human, as opposed to a half-elf in this game. Then we have half-orc, right? Half-bad guy. As you might expect, definitely much more of the warrior classes is what you're looking for here. Their max stats are 18, 10, 15, 18, and 11. And then nothing new here. They can be a rogue, which makes sense for a half-orc. They say that they're not as friendly, but, they work with us just fine. And then finally we have the gnomes. Gnomes are, small little guys. They're tricksy a lot, but they have other uses than a rogue, which is usually what I picture a gnome as in these games. But they have max stats of 16, 17, 14, 10, and 11. So they have the lowest constitution, but a lot of their other stats are really good. So they end up being useful. So that's kind of the general idea of character creation. You do need to create your own bard when you start the game. They will not have create a bard, so you do need to create a bard if you want that in your party. Otherwise, you can use the party members that the game kind of comes with, but it's a lot more fun if you create your own, and it doesn't take that long to create them, so I created my own, and we'll talk about that next time. That's going to do it for this part of The Bard's Tale. I've been ballerscuba. I've been joined, as always, by nobody. There's nobody yet. But this has been Video Games Over Time. I hope you laughed, I hope you learned, and I hope to see you next time for actual gameplay from The Bard's Tale. Thanks for watching.